you hear that music and you see the old orange 44 over my shoulder there, you know it's time to go inside enemy territory, Syracuse football style. Welcome aboard MC Show Digital at MC Show Digital, our YouTube channel. Hit the thumbs up, like our video, and also don't forget to subscribe. We'd love for you to be part of our subscriber community. Inside enemy territory is where we talk to someone from the opponent and we break down Syracuse's matchup. And this coming weekend, it is Syracuse and Duke, not basketball. We're talking football, and we bring in the play-by-play voice of Duke, David Shumate. Hello, David. How are you?
Doing well, guys. How are y'all?
Welcome aboard. Good to be talking football with you, my friend. Go ahead, Boy Dream.
Yeah.
First question.
And a reminder, everybody, this episode is brought to you by our friends over at Play It Again Sports Syracuse, baby. And you ask how we're doing. Normally, yeah, good. You? No, we're doing awesome. We're riding in a crazy high beaten Clemson for the first time ever in Death Valley. So, we're pretty pumped up heading into this one, David.
No, I mean, that was incredibly impressive. Win 34-21, and from what I saw, it wasn't really that close. And kudos to everybody associated with Syracuse, where they went in there and just took the initiative early. That incredible call to do the onside kick after the first touchdown was very impressive, and obviously the Blue Devils are going to have their hands full this weekend.
So, David, let me do a quick follow-up here. Have you ever had a situation like that? So for people that just saw the box score, just look like a normal game, whatever. Sure, Syracuse got an upset. Upsets happen all the time. But there was a 2+ hour lightning delay in the middle of the game at halftime where Fran Brown rallied his troops supposedly with this emotional speech. And then they got out there and then up back to the locker room, lightning delay. So they lost all the juice. But from the broadcaster perspective, 2 hours are just sort of sitting around. Have you ever had a situation like that, David?
I have. It was last year, actually. We were in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Duke was taking on Middle Tennessee State. The game was kind of in hand at that point, but it was early enough in the ball game you wanted to finish. And it was the craziest thing. It was a beautiful forecast. And literally, guys, over the entire state of Tennessee, there was one cell, and it was sitting over Murfreesboro. But it was one of those because it wasn't huge weather system, just a little pop-up shower. You're like, how long is this going to be? We'll just keep talking. Well, an hour and a half later, we had just kept talking, waiting for the weather to clear. So it is – it's that time of year, knock on wood. We've avoided that this season and won't have to worry about that this weekend, obviously. But no, the weather delays can be brutal.
Well, David, we had a little interesting situation. This is kind of an ACC thing, so I'll raise it here in our discussion inside enemy territory. Syracuse got fined $25,000 for faking injuries, apparently in the fourth quarter of this one against Clemson over the weekend. We've seen this in college football a lot. I know you're covering games, you're calling games. We've seen guys that they go to the line of scrimmage and boom, all of a sudden they drop and then the timeout comes in and they want to make a change, maybe get a substitution in there, yada, yada. What do you make of this? Have you seen any of this anywhere else in the ACC? Has Duke gotten fined? Have any other teams that you've come across gotten fined for this? Because while I like the spirit of the law, if it's just Syracuse that's gotten fined so far, I'm wondering what's going on with everyone else, because I've been seeing this more as a rampant problem rather than an isolated incident.
And I brought it out beyond the ACC, right? It's why they created that new rule where essentially once the ball's spotted, you're charged a timeout if you go down. And to me, it's a very difficult thing really to put on an officiating crew, a conference officer, what have you, because do we really want to get into the business of policing when a guy is hurt and trying to determine when a guy is hurt? It's one of those things that, the coaches have talked about a lot. The conference commissioners have talked about a lot. If it is going on anywhere, obviously you don't want it to be going on, but I think that is a very difficult thing to legislate and police because you're getting into intent, which is just a really difficult place, at least from my vantage point, for officials to live. Because, you've seen it this year, and I know I'm focused on the broader rule. It does feel like some of the teams that have been penalized and had timeouts taken away because of that rule actually did have injuries. And some of the teams that maybe in the past, I won't name any, but some are in the SEC that use that have not been penalized. So what you're intending to stop, you're really not, and you're penalizing other people. It's a really hard problem to solve. I'm not saying it's easy, but that's one of the reasons it's hard to police. And when it does get policed, sometimes you're not even policing the right person.
We've got Syracuse and Duke coming up this weekend, as we talked about right before the show started. Duke is a favorite coming in here, and I'd imagine a big reason for that is Syracuse lost its starting quarterback. So it's been a wild roller coaster for the Orange so far. How's it been for you guys, David? I've seen some wins, I've seen some losses. It seems like a mixed bag so far for the Blue Devils.
I think that's a fair way to put it. I mean, Duke is 2-2. I'm sure you guys know this at this point, and have losses to Illinois and Tulane in non-conference play. And the Illinois game was kind of crazy in many respects. If you watch the game, and if you look at the box score, it looked like a blowout win for Illinois, just in terms of the final score. But if you watch the game, Duke was the better team at the line of scrimmage for most of the afternoon, but 5 turnovers, and you're going to have a hard time beating anybody. And that was the story of that game. And then go down to Tulane and give Tulane a lot of credit. They played awfully well. Obviously, Darian Mensah, who's now the quarterback at Duke, was at Tulane a year ago, so they were very fired up for that game. There's a lot of conversation about it being their Super Bowl, and Jake Retzloff, the quarterback, was really good, particularly in the run game. And the Blue Devils got behind and were kind of battling uphill, got it within a touchdown late, but could never get over the hump. But you saw flashes of what they could be. And I do think this past weekend against NC State, in a game where they fell behind 20-7, they really got back to their identity. After the first quarter, the tackling was much improved, and putting up 45 points to win by 12. They forced 4 turnovers. It felt like they got back to their identity. So it's one of those things that the record may not jump off the page, but if you watch this team and some of the plays, the individual talent, and also some of the collective stuff they've done, gives you a lot of optimism for what they can do in ACC play, even if there are some new pieces in the receiving game. And obviously Darian Mensah being new, this is a very talented team that entered the year with high expectations and still feels like they have a lot to accomplish and feels like they can, particularly coming off that win over NC State.
Yeah, so you're dipping your toe in the pond there a little bit, David, with my next question, which is what were expectations going into this season, and what are the elements of Duke that have set those expectations?
I mean, I think they expected to take another step forward with, competing for an ACC championship, and obviously what that means in terms of the ultimate postseason. And I think with Darian Mensah's arrival and what they felt like they have at quarterback and what they do have at quarterback, if you look at his statistics, they're awfully impressive in what he's done through his first 4 games. So they knew they were likely going to take a step forward offensively, bringing in guys like Cooper Barkate and Angel Anthony into the receiving room to complement what they already had there, and bringing so many guys back on defense, particularly along the defensive line, which I'm sure we'll talk about is really the strength of this defense, with 2 elite edge rushers and VJ Anthony and Wesley Williams that can really get after the quarterback. The interior is stout with Josiah Green and Aaron Hall. They've had some pieces in the secondary they've had to replace, and unfortunately this week that they've had to deal with some injuries in the linebacker room, losing their middle linebacker Nick Morris for the year after the game against NC State. But they do feel like they can create a lot of havoc on defense. So they felt like coming into the year they had a chance to accomplish all their goals, including winning the ACC. And after the disappointment of those 2 losses in non-conference play, it's been a laser beam focus on conference play and kind of the ultimate reset. Folks like to talk about. A lot of times I feel like we say that in the basketball context more so than the football context. But I do think with the expansion of the college football playoff, 12 teams now likely going to 16, you're going to hear more and more of that, because it essentially gives you a second bite at the apple if you do stub your toe in non-conference play.
David, I want to go back to NC State because you said it several times. Duke went back to its identity. The natural follow-up is, what is the Duke Blue Devils identity?
It's creating havoc on defense and getting into the backfield and not being flustered when things go wrong. I mean, there was one play in particular in special teams, which Duke has had some trouble in the kicking game, but they had a good day in special teams against NC State, but they have a really good long snapper in Curtis Cooper, and he had a bad snap and it went through the legs of Cade Reynoldson, a pivotal point in the ball game, single possession game in the third quarter. Reynoldson chases it down in the end zone, turns around and gets a punt off and gets it all the way out to the, Duke's own 40-yard line, but it could have been a safety, it could have been a touchdown, could have been disaster. The defense comes out, gets a 4-and-out stop, and it completely flips field position. They end up getting a field goal and building a double-digit lead, and that was what they did all of last year, picking each other up. When a mistake happened, they didn't hang their head. It didn't compound and see the game get away from them. And then, like I said at the top, getting after the quarterback, Bailey was under pressure all day long, a bunch of tackles for loss, and forcing NC State to play behind the line of scrimmage and off schedule was really what we saw in the second half, as Duke was able to open up and finish out the game by getting pressure on their quarterback.
David Shumate, the voice of Duke, joining us. We're inside enemy territory, Syracuse and Duke this weekend at the JMA Wireless. Duke comes in 2-2. Syracuse, of course, 3-1, coming off that glorious victory against Clemson down in Death Valley. Syracuse lost its quarterback, Steve Angeli, an Achilles for the season. Ricky Collins will take over. This is a highly recruited kid. He started at LSU, got a little bit of playing time down there, kind of in garbage time. He decides to make the transfer portal his friend. He comes to Syracuse to play for Fran Brown. All things are lining up like Ricky's going to be the starter, and Steve Angeli comes out of the portal. The next thing you know, you got a battle. Angeli wins that battle. So let me take you now to Ricky Collins. Highly recruited, but pretty inexperienced. You mentioned Duke likes to wreak havoc. So do you expect, and would it be Duke's modus operandi here to really, really get after the young kid and try and fluster him early?
Yeah, and that's not really, to be fair, specific to the fact that, it's a quarterback that, as you said, is very talented with limited playing experience. That is just how Duke plays. They play aggressively. They come off the ball. They try to get into the backfield. They try to speed things up, and that's how they complement their defense. They're going to do that whether they're playing Angeli or whether they're playing Collins. That's just how they want to disrupt things, and that's something with the Manny Diaz defense. Look, whether it was at Miami, whether it was at Penn State when he was the defensive coordinator, and now here at Duke, it's been like a decade where his teams are always in the top 5 nationally in tackles for loss and sacks. That's a huge identity of the defense, and I don't expect that to change this weekend to try to limit the amount of time that he has to sit back there and pick things apart. And Manny Diaz has talked about that this week of this Syracuse passing attack is incredible. I mean, McCord last year, leading the country, everything that came with that. And the numbers are right there again this year with Angeli. So there's no reason to think that the passing attack will be any different under Collins. It's a very lethal offense. So you got to do everything you can to disrupt the timing of that, get into the backfield, and shorten how much time he has to look around and find his guys.
David, as I look at the Duke's, schedule so far and some of the ways that Duke has won, it looks like there's a lot of different ways. In a perfect world, if Duke could square up with Syracuse, and you could say, if the point total is this, if Duke reaches this number, I feel pretty good about Duke winning this game. What's the kind of game that Duke wants to play?
I think and I understand what you're saying about point total and all that sort of stuff. To me, it's clean. It's clean is what you have to do, particularly when you go on the road. And, that win over NC State, 4 turnovers they forced, and they didn't have one. I mean, direct opposite of what happened against Illinois. And obviously the scoreboard speaks for itself, because it's worth noting in those 2 losses to Illinois and Tulane, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, Duke had more yardage in those games. But they lost those ball games, and they actually had less total yardage in NC State and won the ball game. So I think playing clean and not turning it over is going to be incredibly important. And then obviously special teams and making sure that is clean as well. It's not a fun thing to talk about, but I mean, you look at these box scores and things like that. I mean, heck, you look at what Syracuse did last week against Clemson, played clean, forced some turnovers, and they're really good on 3rd and 4th down defensively. Sometimes football is very complicated, but when you turn it over and the other team doesn't, it gets real simple, real fast.
We're inside enemy territory with David Shumate, the play-by-play voice of Duke. Today's broadcast brought to you by our friends at Play It Again Sports. Let's just take 30 seconds, learn a little bit more about our friends from Play It Again.
Warm weather sports season is here, and if you want to gear up and save money on some of the top brands of golf, soccer, and baseball equipment, and much more, Play It Again Sports can be your solution. With both new and gently used gear, Play It Again has prices way less than regular retail stores. And for all you golfers out there, get some quick money for those clubs you've got stashed away and are collecting dust. Play It Again is always looking for quality gear. No appointment necessary. Just bring it into the store. Play It Again Sports in the DeWitt Town Center on Erie Boulevard. Don't spend more. Play it again. Play It Again Sports. Syracuse.com.
All right, back on the Manchild Show with Boy Green Digital at MC Show Digital. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up, like our video, and also hit the subscribe button. We'd love for you to be part of our community. Right now, we're getting ready to give away a golf club. When we get to 500 subscribers, we're giving away a brand new Cleveland driver brought to you by those people. Play It Again Sports. Thank them for donating a golf club and helping us try to build up our subscribership. We've only been here in the digital world less than 3 months, so our community is growing every day, and we'd love for you to be a part of it.
Real quick. Yeah, David, are you a golfer?
I attempt to. I wouldn't say I'm very good at it. I like to go outside. I try to play, and not this time of year, but in the summer, I try to play a couple times a week.
Okay, good. No, Lerch is bringing up let's get it. Let's go full screen. Go ahead, Lerch.
Got the beautiful eyeball XL, baby. Cleveland Beauty is the look still in a wrapper here. Here we go. Bingo. Look at this, baby.
There you go.
Still in a wrapper. $400 retail value.
You got a lefty? You got a lefty version?
No, are you left-handed?
Yeah.
Well, that's tricky. Yeah, that's always
out of the running already.
I bet you Play It Again has lefty clubs though too. If you want to save a little money,
we'll work on that. Yeah.
All right, we spent some time talking about the defense, David. Let's talk about the Duke offense. What kind of skill set did they bring to the table? Start with their quarterback and kind of work us through the skill positions.
Yeah, Darian Mensah, and there was a lot of conversation in the preseason about his mobility. And look, he can run, but he's definitely someone who wants to throw. Even when he gets off his spot and moves out, when he's flushed or if he decides to get out to a certain side of the field, he's really good at keeping his eyes down the field and identifying guys that are open. And that's something Manny Diaz has talked about a bunch. Jonathan Brewer is the offensive coordinator. He comes out of that Rhett Lashley system. Rhett Lashley, of course, was with Manny Diaz when he was down at Miami, and Johnny Brewer was with Rhett Lashley when he was at SMU before he came over to Duke. So this is a team that likes to stretch the field, and they want to make you defend multiple plays within the same play. So when Darian Mensah can get out of the pocket, he is still trying to look downfield and make plays, and he's been very adept at that. And really one of the reasons he's been so effective is, as you guys know, looking at the stats, yes, Cooper Barcade is the leading receiver statistically, but there's so many different guys you have to keep track of. Andrew Anthony has incredible speed. Quayshawn Brown has quick twitch, can get open in the middle of the field. Samir Hagans is kind of an experienced presence. Jeremiah Hazley's been coming on one of the tight ends, and Landon King, another tight end, had an incredible catch a week ago. So not dissimilar to what Syracuse can do. There's just a lot of people you have to keep track of in the receiving game. And just to kind of close the book offensively, it's a group of guys that get it done in the backfield. And Jaquez Moore is the leading tailback as the returner coming in. But Nate Shepard, a freshman out of Mandeville, Louisiana, has really popped of late. And then they've got a transfer from Appalachian State, Anderson Castle, that had a big game against NC State, 3 touchdowns and a 66-yarder that really closed it late. And all of that is working because they have a really experienced offensive line, and they've done a nice job protecting Mensah and opening up holes in the run game. 4 returners from a year ago, a transfer, Jordan Larson, that comes in from South Dakota. He'll start at left guard. They feel really good about where they are up front on both sides of the ball. And as you guys know, that does open up everything else you're trying to do.
You see, Boyd Green, I hear David Shumate talk about Duke, and now I'm starting to understand this 5.5 point points that I don't understand. The Duke is favored somehow at the JMA. We can get into that another time. Go ahead.
Yeah, let's get back into your quarterback, Darian Mensah. Much was made of Duke's addition of Darian, in the college football social media world. They were buzzing, certainly, with the addition of Darian Mensah. And statistically, it looks really good. But just to ask you straight up, David, has Duke gotten its bang for its buck? And that's not an NIL joke or anything that could be included there. It's specifically Darian Mensah, that for all the hubbub and hype, and I know he doesn't control that, but that's what's going on in Fanland. Has it merited it? Has he been as good as folks thought he was going to be?
I think so. I mean, you see what he's doing and running this offense and the even keel that he has. He's a captain on this team, which tells you something about what his teammates think of him, because at Duke and most places, the players vote on that. So they see him as a clear leader on this team. And when it was going well and going poorly, to be candid, he has a nice even keel, which is what you'd hope for a quarterback with all the pressure that comes with everything that's been surrounding him. So he has all the intangibles that you want, and he fits in well with the culture. And then everything he can do on the football field really stands out. Have there been mistakes? Yes. There was an interception thrown against Tulane. There were a couple sack fumbles against Illinois. But I think it's worth noting, learning experience for him, but also there were times when Duke was pressing a little bit, trying to get back into the ball game. And we all know, watching football over the years, sometimes that's when mistakes happen. But when Duke is playing ahead or in the flow of the game, he's been really good, and he's cleaned up those mistakes. To me, that's something I see. Like I said, there were a couple sack fumbles in the game against Illinois. There hasn't been one since. There was an interception on a miscommunication with the receiver against Tulane. We haven't seen that since. Not saying there'll never be a mistake, but when you don't see repetition in terms of mistakes, that's something I look for in terms of his progression. And then you stack that on top of everything he can do throwing the football and stressing the defense is awfully impressive, including, and look, I'm very impressed with the Duke offense. You can tell that. He's a nightmare because I talk about Johnny Brewer, and this offense likes to stretch the field. About a quarter of his passes have gone to running backs, and he's very adept at the check down game as well. So it's kind of pick your poison and what you want to take away facing this Duke team. I've been very impressed with Darian through his first 4 games, giving, as you said, everything that's been surrounding him.
David, I'm going to talk to you about something that I now call the Fran Brown effect. All right. I've been asking a lot of our visitors here who go inside enemy territory. So what do you hear down in a good old Durham about Fran Brown and what he's doing with this Syracuse program. You know, the record from last year, what he's done in the portal, what he's been able to do now getting into the high school ranks and bringing good, solid high school recruits to Syracuse. He's doing things that Syracuse hasn't done almost in their history, and he's only been here less than 2 years, 18-ish months. What's the Fran Brown effect? What's the sound of the Fran Brown effect down in a place like Durham?
To me, what you notice and you hear being talked about, and I think we've seen this here at Duke as well, with what Manny Diaz has built, Mike Elko before him, even David Cutcliffe to a certain extent, what he did and kind of bringing the program back to life and everything he did in his tenure here. You hear a lot of coaches across the country talk about culture, and it can be a buzzword and everything like that. But when you look at what Fran Brown has done, was it 13 wins already in his tenure at Syracuse? They have his identity. His team plays like him. They're tough. They're mentally tough. They go out. You can tell that the togetherness, the celebrations on the sideline, that they feed off of that. He feeds off of that, that it feels like he's in it with them, and that permeates into winning. So to me, yeah, we can talk about this player here and this skill set, and that guy's good at this. And Syracuse certainly has all of those pieces. But I think it's the culture that he's instilled and just being a guy who knows how to win and what it takes to win in terms of the work ethic. And to me, from my vantage point, I appreciate the fact that he celebrates winning and really leans into that with the guys, because it's so hard to do that in this sport. And I think it's really built for what modern college football is. It's very impressive. You guys live it day to day, but to see it from a distance is awfully impressive because, like I said, everybody talks about it. It's very hard to live it, and he certainly does.
And last one for me, David. You just mentioned your guy, Manny Diaz. What about him? Season number 2 at the helm there for Duke. Obviously, he has a very impressive football resume. Again, another guy, when he was hired at Duke, a lot of buzz, and understandably so.
Yeah, to me, it's interesting. And, I think about, we're talking about Fran Brown and what he's done this year. A lot of people had questions for Syracuse, I think, in the offseason about what this year would look like with some of the pieces that were lost. And here they are at 3-1. And I think Manny Diaz stepped into something when Mike Elko left to go to Texas A&M that people were saying, okay, Duke is going to take a step backward. And he comes in and wins right away. And he set the tone in his first meeting with the players that he came in and talked to them about the resurgence of the program and how the program had won consistently under Mike Elko in those 2 years. And he talked about how it was the players who had really done that, and he talked about how under him, it would be the players who would continue to be the ones who would do that. And that belief he instilled in those guys that were still in that locker room, and the belief he had in them really resonated when you talk to players on the team, and the candidness with which he approaches his conversations with the team. A lot of guys will pick and choose when to go fire and brimstone or when to get fired up. He's honest with them. If they have a good practice, he's going to tell them they had a good practice. If they had a bad practice, he'll tell them that too. But to me, that candidness, that honesty in which he communicates with the team, in which they know that he has their back. Again, what I said about Fran Brown, to me, really matches this moment we're in, because as we get into revenue sharing and all that sort of stuff, we're talking about, in some respects, the professionalization of college sports. And I think coaches that kind of coach like NFL coaches are going to have the most success in that space. And to me, that's kind of how Manny Diaz goes about it.
Well, David, thanks for the scouting report. Thanks for going inside enemy territory with us.
Appreciate it, fellas.